All her friends had fallen in love multiple times, been in relationships, as they say, and one even got married, gave birth to a son, and is now on academic leave because of that. But she remained single. Although there were repeated attempts from young men to get to know her, and those who already knew her tried to move into the boyfriend category, she felt that it wasn't right for her. She didn't want to deceive the guys just to avoid seeming like the odd one out. "You're old-fashioned," they told her. She probably agreed, but nothing changed from that. If anyone understood her, it was her parents. They themselves got married because they loved each other, and still do, it's obvious. They've become who they are now, their own business, a house in a prestigious suburban village, cars for dad and mom. Now the parents can afford practically everything, from everyday life to foreign travels, and always with their daughter. So she wanted her family to be in the image and likeness of the one she grew up in. And it's not about the money, it's about the relationships. Or even the fact that mom categorically refused a housekeeper. She cooked herself, cleaned herself, and always called her daughter. Mom said she couldn't trust someone else with cooking the food. Sure, a housekeeper might handle breakfast, lunch, and dinner excellently, but mom knows better what to prepare. After all, it's for her husband and daughter. So the daughter grew up not at all spoiled. Externally, she looked like a rich kid, but in reality, she wasn't. In her second year, her parents suggested she live alone in a rented apartment. They wanted to make sure their daughter could manage the household herself, and didn't say that it wasn't a rental apartment, but one bought in her name. They decided to tell her later. But mom was already starting to worry that her daughter was postponing things indefinitely. Lots of girlfriends and friends, but no one special who she liked. Dad once said at dinner, "You know where your name comes from. You're Dorothy. You really are a gift to us. We waited 3 years for you. Doubts had already arisen whether we'd have a child. Then we found out it was happening, and I came up with that name for you." Oh, you laughed right away. Mom said no other name would fit. Only a gift. Only Dorothy. "And now, daughter, we're waiting for a gift from you." Dad looked at her. "Well, not right now. We're not rushing, but we'd like one." And then, as if on purpose, Dorothy met a guy and immediately fell in love with him. Whether it was the parental conversation that worked or the guy was just right for her, but after a week, Dorothy couldn't deceive herself. She only thought about him. If only she knew how Max felt about her, but she couldn't ask him. And she didn't have to ask. Max confessed himself that he really needed Dorothy, and he called her a gift. Dorothy was finishing her 4th year then, but even if it had been just the first year, she wouldn't have hesitated. Max became the main thing in her life. He was 3 years older, already working in his father's company, also from a well-off family, and also not... They were generally similar to each other, and not just in being well-read. Both were interested in living life, not wasting it, although both had the opportunity to do so, but building it independently, succeeding in their profession. Max had already succeeded, and Dorothy was just starting on this future profession she chose independently. Even in school, she wanted to become a designer. And so they started living together in Dorothy's apartment. They were already acquainted with the parents and got their consent to move in. "Do you want to test yourselves?" asked Max's father. "You could say that," replied Max, hugging Dorothy. But they themselves knew it wasn't about testing. Dorothy wanted to be a bride, and she went to the registry office with one important document for her, with her diploma. "You can consider this," she told Max, "a whim, but I want to be a bride with it. And not with parental, but my own dowry, this diploma." "No whim, Dory," Max reassured her, "and I understand you." Agreed. So they lived together for a whole year, the last year of Dorothy's studies. The parents tactfully warned in advance and came to them more often than Dorothy and Max to them. Meeting either those or the other parents, they said they were always ready for a spot check, and mom checked mainly the contents of the refrigerator. The future mother-in-law each time after such an inspection said, "Dory, you're great. It took me 5 years to learn to run a house like that." "Well, we got our house after those 5 years, defended his wife, Max's dad. In short, if judged by the everyday life that Dorothy and Max created, they passed the test successfully. They knew it themselves. Both loved this apartment. It was cozy for them there. Not without parties, but they happened without shouts and loud music at night. And not so often, guests came. Max and Dorothy felt great, just the two of them. And then came the day of the diploma defense. Max was more nervous than Dorothy. She teased him, assuring that she would defend it. Where could the commission go? Dorothy wrote the diploma herself and could explain every line, every footnote and illustration. But deep down, she was glad that he was so worried about her. And he also reminded her that right after the diploma, they'd go to the registry office. And Max, waiting for Dorothy, who was one of the first to defend her diploma, right there as soon as they descended from the university steps, proposed to her. And Dorothy, of course, said her yes. Then they went to submit the application. They didn't beg to be married faster. They wanted to prepare properly for the wedding, choose where to go on the honeymoon, and buy tickets. First, Max literally ordered Dorothy to sleep in for a couple of days. She didn't argue. She was tired, even though she believed the defense would go well. "Rest, Dory," he said. "Now I have more work, but I'll clear it all." And then Dorothy noticed that Max had kind of changed. He couldn't hide his anxiety, and it clearly wasn't because of the upcoming wedding. It seems like the wedding was starting to lose interest for him. Max didn't even have time to choose a dress with Dorothy. Half jokingly, he said there's a superstition. The groom shouldn't see the bride in the wedding dress before the registry office. Dorothy had heard of this superstition herself, but for some reason, it seemed to her that it was about something else entirely. But what, she had no idea. But the fact that Max now went to another room when he got calls, there hadn't been that before. There hadn't been him flipping his phone screen down either. Whether you want it or not, bad thoughts come to mind. Maybe on the eve of the wedding, Max got infatuated with someone. Does that not happen? And he can't confess. Conscience or principles don't allow it. And when he confesses, it'll be as her husband. Well, such thoughts climbed into her head that Dorothy was beside herself. And after finding a children's toy in Max's car, she almost no longer doubted that he was deceiving her. But she'd heard from friends what tricks husbands go to hide their infidelity, and she thought that with her and Max, it was different. Well, who is she now? Naive, or a ruder word fits? Whatever with the word, but she needs to verify. And now, while there hasn't been this wedding yet, if Max is deceiving her, Dorothy will find the strength to break up with him. She just can't imagine how to live without Max. If someone had told Dorothy a month ago that she would spy on Max out of jealousy, she would have laughed. Spy, like in a bad romance? Maybe then beg on her knees not to leave her? No, Dorothy didn't live on a desert island. She knew such real stories and knew some of the participants. For example, her classmate's mom also spied and even involved her. Well, they tracked him down, then every day at home there were scenes, promises that no more, but in the end, the husband and father left the family. And not humiliation that her classmate experienced for her mom and herself when they sat in ambush made the daughter nervous, even angry, distrustful. But now Dorothy justified them. The situation cleared up, so she wants clarity too. The main thing is that her mom and dad don't find out, and Dorothy will get clarity. Right now, she'll install a tracking app on Max's phone. This service is provided at the nearby service center, and they'll do it for her. They did. So Dorothy learned that Max often goes to the same house. The address of this house became known. True, without the apartment number. Well, nothing. Dorothy will find out the apartment number. And during all this time while Dorothy organized the surveillance, or search, it never once occurred to her how humiliating this is. What humiliation, if she must know who Max is cheating on her with? And then there's that children's toy. Very possible that Max has an illegitimate child. For example, he didn't acknowledge him before, and now maybe fatherly feelings have awakened. And here, Dorothy decided what to do. In 5th grade, they took first place in the school amateur performance viewing and won a trip to the youth theater in the neighboring city. And the victory was largely thanks to her, Dorothy's. It was her idea to sing "Let the Clumsy Pedestrians Run Through the Puddles," supplementing the singing with several characters, Crocodile Gina and Cheburashka, the old woman Shapokliak, and Lariska with the rat. And Dorothy was in the Shapokliak costume and strutted so well in front of the choir. So now Dorothy will call on a costume for help. And what's the most appropriate for the situation? She'll dress up as a gas worker and check apartments until she discovers in one of them her, or already not her, Max, and the one he's entertaining himself with, and probably his child will be there too. In short, the full set. And so Dorothy buys a uniform at the workwear store, plus a cap with a big visor. Sunglasses are at home. On the balcony, there's a toolbox with tools that Dad specially left just in case. And a wig. Dorothy looks in the mirror. Yes, even she wouldn't recognize herself. And she leaves the apartment, takes a taxi to the house whose address she knows from the app. On the spot, she adjusts her plan. Max should come here, and she'll wait for him. Sit on the children's playground bench and wait. and she'll find out which apartment he enters. Dorothy prepared to wait long, but Max arrived in an hour, parked at one entrance, took several bags with the supermarket logo from the trunk, and entered the entrance. Dorothy immediately approached two grandmothers sitting on a bench. "Help me, please. A request came in that in one of the apartments in this entrance there's a gas leak. A young woman called, said she's home alone with a child and is afraid something might happen, as the gas smell is already noticeable in the corridor. And I misplaced the sheet with the address and apartment number. Can you tell me where the young woman with the child lives?" "Oh, that's the new tenant. She's been renting here for about a month." "Go check, of course. You need the third floor, apartment 14. And Dorothy went to the entrance, but she didn't know the code. Asking the grandmothers again would raise suspicion. What kind of gas worker is she who knows neither the code nor the apartment number? A guy coming out of this entrance saved her. He just opened the door when Dorothy entered. Dorothy climbs to the third floor and tries not to cry. She's already imagining the picture awaiting her, composed from various movies where there are so many similar episodes. And now she'll see it in reality. But she has to play the role to the end. So wipe the tears, pull the baseball cap almost over her nose, and ring the doorbell. Max opens, glances at her briefly, and doesn't recognize her. Of course, not for nothing did Dorothy try. And now, in some not her own voice, Dorothy says she's a gas worker for a routine check. He doesn't recognize her and invites her to the kitchen. There sits a young, tear-stained woman in a simple and clearly old robe, without makeup, light brown hair caught with a child's hairpin. Well, somehow that's not how Dorothy imagined meeting a lover. Although, here's the boy. So Max isn't a lover. He came to his son and his ex. And Dorothy will listen to everything they say. She has nothing to lose. And mostly the young woman speaks. She's already taken the boy in her arms. "You came to us, Max. Paul and I will be grateful to you forever. But how much can we accept help? You brought groceries again. We haven't even eaten the previous ones yet. And besides, you have a wedding soon. Probably preparations are underway and you need to spend more time with your fiancé. The main thing is you've already done, saved us, and for the rest I'll pay back somehow. I don't know how yet, but I'll definitely pay back. Just find a job." "Uncle Max," says the boy, "Mom promised that when she goes to work she'll send me to kindergarten, and it's good there. There are toys." "Yes, Paul," Max smiles at the boy. "There are lots of toys." Years ago, came to the city from a small village. At home, her mom and younger brother and stepfather remained, the natural father of her younger brother. The stepfather disliked Helen from the first day. He didn't beat her, but shouted and scolded her constantly, and Mom didn't stand up for her. Helen understood that she wouldn't. Mom didn't want the stepfather to leave her, so she bore him a son, and everything was for that son, only sometimes briefly. And Mom hugged Helen and said, "Forgive me, daughter. You'll soon be grown up and probably leave, but I have nowhere to go. I'll live as a wife. Forgive me." Helen, having received her certificate, left right away. Mom secretly slipped her a handkerchief tied in a knot with money, or she guessed how Mom had scraped it together. She felt sorry for Mom. She didn't live cheerfully, worked a lot, now submitted to the stepfather in everything. Helen felt sorry for her younger brother too. He was still a preschooler, didn't understand much. But he already yelled at Mom like the stepfather, and still Helen left them. She felt extra. In the city, Mom's money helped. Helen rented a corner from one woman who had 2 daughters and raised them alone. This woman helped Helen find a job, got her as a cleaner in a big store on the market where she herself was a seller. And in this store, Helen met Theodore. He spoke to her himself. Helen felt awkward in a blue robe and with a mop in her hands. Theodore was dressed nicely, fashionably, holding the latest model phone. That's what Helen understood later, that she was such a curiosity for Theodore against the background of his familiar girls. And though Helen resisted for some time, she moved to live in his rich apartment, and Theodore himself was rich and his parents were rich, so he didn't invite Helen to meet them. When Helen learned she was having a child, she hoped they'd get married, but soon she understood that Theodore would never propose to her. She wasn't his equal. When Paul was born, he could not show up at home for a week, and she was forbidden to ask where he'd been. Good that he left at least some money. Child maintenance cost a lot. So Helen lived in anticipation of when Theodore would get tired of this and evict them from his apartment. Only she didn't expect he'd do it today and at night. And even more, she didn't expect he'd accuse her that the child wasn't his and that he wouldn't pay alimony or help in any way. And let Helen not think of suing, he not only has connections everywhere, he has acquaintances who will quickly shut her mouth. Theodore said this, grabbed Helen by the arm, he didn't even let her take a warm sweater for Paul, and dragged her down the stairs to his car. And there sat some girl. He started kissing her, gave her the apartment keys, and asked her to wait while, as he said, he got rid of the hanger-on, but quickly. The girl sent him an air kiss and went to the entrance. Dorothy stands and dreams of falling through the earth. Well, at least disappearing without a trace. She's already understood that everything is not like that. She doesn't know how, but not like that, that's for sure. And she finds the strength to say that everything is in order with them and heads for the exit. Faster, faster from here, or Dorothy will howl. And there's reason to. She turns the corner of the house and takes off the cap. She walks home on foot, and with each step, she puts together what she just saw and what she recently invented into one picture. Max is a liar. No. He has a mistress? No. Has a child? No. So what's the truth then? At home, Dorothy washes and scrubs off the traces of foundation cream, rubs hard until it hurts, but that pain couldn't overshadow the shame. Dorothy was ashamed, so ashamed as never before in her life. And while washing, she decided she'd find out everything from Max and confess herself how she spied on him. Let him decide what to do with that. And Dorothy confessed. At first, Max burst out laughing, remembering what that gas worker looked like. Well, Dory, the makeup was super. I couldn't even imagine you in such gear and such makeup. So I don't know all your talents yet. What else are you hiding? Come on, confess, Max said, hugging Dorothy. Then he looked at her attentively and said, "What an idiot I am. I should have told you everything right away." A month ago, Max went to his partner outside the city. He was after an operation, not yet back at work. The issue could have been resolved by phone, but Max wanted to visit him too. They've been partners for more than a year and could even be called friends. Well, he stayed late with him. That was when I called you and warned you, remember? Then I came home almost at night. You were already asleep and I didn't wake you. Dorothy remembered. Max very rarely came home so late from work, and this was one of the few times. She wanted to ask in the morning if the meeting with the partner went well and how he felt, but then something distracted her and she somehow forgot. And Max deliberately didn't tell her anything. He'd learned too much misfortune, even though these were strangers to him. But that's how Max was. If he could help, he helped without fail. So that late evening on the empty suburban road, a foreign car drove ahead for some time, then stopped. A man got out, opened the back door, and literally threw a girl with a child in her arms out of the car, then hit the gas and sped away. When Max drove up, he saw a young girl standing on the roadside, clutching a child to herself and crying. An empty road, almost night, and here a girl with a child. No things with them, and it had become chilly. The child, it was a boy about 3, didn't cry but said he was cold. Max called them to his car. The girl didn't want to go at first, then she did and sat in the back seat. Max stopped at a roadside cafe, bought them tea and something sweet. The girl didn't even touch it, but the boy ate everything, drank the tea, and immediately fell asleep, putting his head on the table. The girl took him in her arms and then, without waiting for a question, told how she and her son ended up practically at night on the road. Helen, that was the girl's name. Theodore shoved Helen and Paul into the car and raced off. Well, outside the city, he threw them out. So what was I supposed to do, Dorothy? Max asked. I couldn't leave them on the road at night. Maybe I should have brought them to us, but I didn't want to upset you. You have so many worries before the wedding, and because of work, I'm helping little. Well, I took them to a hotel. While registering, and Helen had no documents, I had to register on myself. But I warned that tomorrow they'd check out. I'd already decided to ask my secretary, Pauline, to urgently find them a small apartment, and I'd settle them there. She found an apartment in about 2 hours, but you saw that apartment. And I connected our lawyer to intervene in this situation somehow. He intervened and immediately said that this Theodore is a spoiled brat and rich too. He talked to him himself, and that one brazenly said that if someone helps these paupers, they'll regret it very much, and he, Theodore, can do anything to you and your loved ones, a lawyer said. Well, we'll rein him in, continued Max, telling. Work is already underway on that, And Helen will have a passport the day after tomorrow, and Paul's birth certificate, I brought them today. Then there will be court. They'll oblige Theodore to take a paternity test, so there will be alimony, and maybe we'll manage to force Theodore to buy housing for his son and Helen. And if not, I'll buy the apartment myself. But Paul isn't guilty that his father is like that, and Helen isn't guilty. And you're guilty? Dorothy no longer held back tears. Why didn't you tell me? And I invented such things, arranged surveillance on you. How ashamed I am. Max, forgive me. Max, it's you forgive me, but I was afraid this spoiled Theodore might harm. I was afraid to think he could get close to you. I'd kill him then. Dorothy threw herself on Max's neck and cried again, but the tears were a bit different. No, still with shame and remorse, but happy. But isn't her Max the best? Not right away, but it turned out as Max planned, with his lawyer. The test confirmed Theodore's paternity, and he'll pay alimony properly. And that's a decent sum. Theodore wasn't allowed even to approach Helen and Paul. Well, judging by everything, he won't suffer from this ban. But the fact that they forced Theodore to buy housing for his son, that infuriated him. But Helen's lawyer, who responded to Max's request to represent her interests, managed to paint an impressive picture of what consequences there could be because Theodore threw Helen and his own son out of his car at night, without things, without money, and without documents. And the last argument that Helen's lawyer only hinted at put Theodore on his back. The lawyer quietly, for Theodore's ears only, said right there in the corridor, "There's a film crew from Criminal Chronicles. You have a chance to appear." Well, with Helen, of course, and Paul. But appearing in such a program, Theodore definitely didn't want. He drilled the lawyer with his eyes for some time, then said, "Find an apartment for these supposed relatives of mine, only don't get greedy. I know the price of one-room Khrushchevkas on the outskirts." When everything ended, when Helen and Paul became legal owners of a small but their own apartment bought in their name, then finally Dorothy gathered courage. She came with Max and gifts for the housewarming. And that time she didn't confess that she already knew Helen and knew Paul, got acquainted when she supposedly checked the gas. Dorothy wants to tell Helen everything, and she's ashamed. So for now, this is their secret with Max, and he doesn't remind his wife about her second profession as a gas worker.